Welcome to the Good Karma Sport Fishing Podcast. I'm your host, Captain Ryan Van Fleet. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Today, I'm interviewing David Conway, outdoor writer. He's been around a long time. He's the author of Fishing Key West and the Lower Keys. Okay, so this book is available in my fishing tackle shop online, goodkarmafishingtackle.com. Now, even though the title says Fishing Key West and Lower Keys, it's not just fishing Key West and Lower Keys. It's for throughout the Keys, and some of this stuff is very applicable to fishing up in the Carolinas, fishing up in all over the place. So some of the tips are just amazing. And this book has been around a while, and not a lot of people talk about it. And I've had the pleasure of fishing with David several times. He actually wrote the article that I was placed on the front cover for Florida Sportsman for, that I was very surprised that I was on the cover. But he's just a great guy, very good. Now, one thing I want to share with you guys is that David shares some really good fishing tips in here, and he talks a lot about fishing with some really good guides down in Key West. And one tip you guys need to listen for is the Yellowtail ham and cheese fishing tip. It is really good. Okay, thanks, guys. Enjoy the interview, and it's all good. All right, welcome, David. How are you, bud?
Doing great, Ryan. How you doing, man?
Yeah, man, it's awesome to have you on. I'm not as everybody knows that I'm not a big guest guy, but it's a pleasure to have you on. So, welcome. So, David, I've got David on today, guys, because he has been around for a very long time in the outdoor industry. And I first picked up David's book when I moved to the Keys. So this was before it was in my dream to become a charter boat captain. And I remember stopping at Shell World while Melinda was picking up little trinkets for her nieces. And I stopped, and this book was there. I picked it up, and I sat there, and I didn't really have any money to buy the book. That's why it stuck in my head. We had very little money, and we were trying to buy some little things for our nieces, and I didn't buy the book that day, because I didn't have that money to spend, and that is the truth. So
we didn't know each other back then.
And as things grew, I became a guide. And the day that I was contacted by Florida Sportsman to do the Yellowtail issue, and it said you were going to be the interviewer, and I was like, and the first thing that came to my mind was your book, and I was like, wow, that's how the universe works. So
that's funny.
Here we are today. So, David, why don't you go ahead and tell us about your background and give us a little history about yourself, and then we'll go from there, brother.
Yeah. I started off, 30 years ago in the Northeast, made my way to California, fished there, went to Texas, fished there, always had visited Key West, then wound up in Key West. And I spent more than a decade in Key West fishing, almost pretty much every day, not as a charter captain, but just on my own. Sometimes I'd lobster in the morning and I'd fish in the afternoon. And then I'd, go to work at night, or reverse that, whatever. So I fished hard for many years. And I also was writing fishing stories for fishing magazines, sport fishing, local stuff down there, your way, and Florida Sportsman. Finally, I said, there's no good book about fishing the Lower Keys. I got to put all this stuff together and fix it up. So I did. And consequently, then I got a job with a full-time as a managing editor at a fishing magazine. And that's pretty much it. That's brought me here back to Stewart.
So when you were in Key West, what was it like? What were you doing for all those, when you were in Key West and fishing, that had to have been something. So what years were that? It was like,
90, I was there 98 to 2010.
Okay.
And, I still go back a lot. I made friends, personal friends with charter captains, and they were, telling me the way things really are in fishing. And then I'd be fishing on my own. I had, everything. I do everything.
Okay.
It's just one thing after another. And, camping trips, those dry Tortugas, overnight trips on motherships to the Marquesas. I mean, I was single.
Single in Key West in the 90s.
Yeah.
That's where you were laughing.
I think that was every guy's dream, man. Every sport fisher's dream, single in Key West, fishing in the 90s. Everybody was watching any TV show wanted to be you.
It was that good. And the funny thing was, I knew it at the time, but I also knew that it wouldn't last forever. So writing the book was a way, in some ways, to wrap it up. Of course, as I said, I'm still fishing down there once in a while. I mean, I get to fish with you once in a while in Tavernier, but I had the direct opportunity to spend time on some of the most amazing charter captains' boats down in Key West. Ralph Delph, his sons, Rob Delph, and Billy Delph with the Delphs. I mean, I got to know them pretty personally, and incredible things they did. Phil Thompson, who's just he recently died. It was a wild man, a flats captain. But, I got to get to know these fishing guys personally. And so the book, as well as how-to fishing for the Lower Keys, I wanted it to be able to convey the world of fishing and some of the personalities down there too.
So your book it's titled Fishing Key West and the Lower Keys, but this book, like going through it and reading it, and it is like chock full of information and little nuggets. And that's what everybody wants, little nuggets. Now, looking at it, it says, like I said, it's fishing in Key West, but really a lot of these techniques can be used like all over the place, up to the Carolinas, up to New Jersey. When it comes to bottom fishing, it's just more like kayak fishing. Like there's one section in there with the jigging, which I thought was very intriguing. And when you wrote the book, jigging was like there wasn't a lot out there about vertical jigging because there was really no like Facebook, really no big like social media forums to share that stuff on. So in the book, you worked with Delph with jigging, and there's not much written by him, which that's out there, and the tips there are amazing.
He, Ralph Delph Sr. was an engineer, and in the late 60s, 70s, he moved down to the Keys. And, honestly, like you, Ryan, he was an innovator, and he was ingenious, developed a lot of, a lot of the concepts for the modern center console boat, actually, and as well as deep jigging. I mean, the braided line, he, in the 80s, got a hold of the parachute line, which was developed in World War II. And he started using that to deep jig manual in 600, 700 feet of water. That was in the 80s. And of course, those lines were refined in the 90s to, what we know now as braided lines. But they explored the deep fishing in 600, 700 feet of water with manual reels, decades ago. And I finally wrote about it, I guess sometime in 2005 or 6 or whatever. But that guy was an absolute innovator and constantly learning.
Yeah, it just tips like that and stories like that. I don't think that people really need to know, because the history behind a lot of this stuff, and that right there, I just learned something. I was like, it's like truly amazing. And now I get why his background and why he did a lot of this stuff, because he was just really thinking. It's just
always thinking. Yeah, always thinking. Just like a doctor who has to read medical journals to know what the latest research says, he was always looking at the latest materials available for boats and for any kind of fishing tackle and finding ways to apply it, even if he had to, improvise the ways to apply these materials, he did. But another guy who was like a real personal friend of mine was Joel Day, and he came from, the Miami Metropolitan Fishing the club, had a house in the Keys, but that's light tackle fishing, right? I'm going to catch a 30, 40-pound grouper on 12-pound mono. That's the old style light tackle fishing. But there's part of the book talks about his idea of jigging with the Don cast jigs down there, which I think are still hand poured. And that's a kind of fishing that nobody really does anymore, but it's extremely effective just with, manual reels, and maybe not as deep as the Delphs did, but 200, 150 feet of water with jigs baited with, artificials or ballyhoo. Man, it slays mutton snappers and groupers. You don't have to do it on 12, 20-pound mono. You can do it with 40 or 50-pound braided now. But, I mean, those guys came from such a deep culture of fishing, which, where it's kind of gone now. But the tips still work. They still catch fish.
Wow. I mean, if you can, it's just so amazing when you go through the book. Your book can help anyone out there. You can help anyone. And reading through it, after each chapter, there's like a captain's tip that's like those little captain's tips right now are extremely hard to find. And that's what a lot of my listeners are looking for each week. They come listening to get a piece of nugget. And this book is chock full. It's like over 200 pages. It looks like every other page has a fishing tip.
Yeah, it was fun to do. I mean, I remember a couple of the tips. I mean, there's one in there that one of the charter captains says, when you're fishing deep for yellowtail, give them the ham and cheese, which is like a bit of mahua and a piece of bonito on the hook, and they just have such funny ways of saying things, but it's actually a pretty good way to catch yellowtail with a bit of bonita, if that's what's available. So yeah, thanks, Ryan. It is a good all around. Honestly, I agree with you. It's especially for Florida. It's a good introduction to saltwater fishing in Florida, because you could take what's in there and use it anywhere in Florida. If you're, interested in bottom fishing for, grouper or muttons or something, or you want a yellowtail anywhere, or you want to, learn about the red fishing and flats fishing in your area, all that stuff applies. It's part of the tricks of the being a fishing writer is you have to, find a new story all the time. But that book for me was the end of what I could do in more than a decade down there in the Keys. Yeah. Trying to pack it all.
It's just packed full of stuff. With what's going on in the industry right now, and you've seen a lot over the course of the years, and you've been involved with the actual fishing industry as far as the magazines go, the social media. Now, as far as how tips are conveyed to people and information, with everything happening, where do you see things going in the future with the industry?
For people who want to find out what's actually happening now and how they can become better at catching what they want to catch, they're going to be leaning on you people like yourself, Ryan. They're going to tune into your podcast. They're going to be a part of your Facebook pages and Instagram and stuff, because you offer geographically specific technical information, which no magazine or no TV show can actually give to viewers. So you, and the handful of other guys who convey in Florida, who convey really, really valuable information through hard work, are going to be where people turn. The technology exists for you to do it, and the technology is actually working against the old-fashioned media, like sending a magazine through the mail. So it's going to be you.
Yeah, boy.
I know a lot of work, though.
What I found interesting, at the very end of your book, there's a guides list, and I was going through it, and I was like, "Hey, man, where am I at?" I was like, "I need to pencil myself in there. I can go to the bookstores with a Post-it note in the call Amazon." It's funny.
Yeah, well, you were, you're not in the lower keys, so.
No, I'm just kidding. It was way before my time. I was like, and what's funny is when I picked up that book, man, I go, man, I saw the guys. I remember that day when I was at Shell World. It's so vivid. And sometimes you pick up little pieces of items and it just sends you back to history. As I looked at that guide list, and I was like, man, someday it'd be cool to be on a guides list in a book. So it's So right now, what's your? I mean, I know we talked before on the last project that we worked on, but what's next for you as far as publications? Do you have anything that you're working on? Any things like that you want to share with the listeners today?
I'm doing 2 books, which is one is a fishing, basically a fishing cookbook, but it's fish that you catch and stuff that you grow in your yard. Since now I have a house with a yard, I've got mango trees and papaya, of course, lychees. So it's this incredible world we live in down here in Florida offers so much. And not just from the oceans, it's from the land too, if you know how to use it. So I'm about halfway through, putting my pictures together and getting the recipes. That's just a labor, like the fishing book, it was just a labor of love. I mean, and then the other book is a book it's called Ways to Be Alive. And it's about sport, because everybody, people like watching sports. I mean, all kinds of sports, but I don't think people understand on a greater aspect how important sport is to, frankly, men's lives. So this is a book about how I've depended on sport to, in some ways learn how to be a guy and be a man and become, take losses. How do you take losses, man? Sports, fishing taught me that. So, I mean, I've traveled, Alaska and all these weird stories that have happened to me are in this book, Ways to Be Alive. And it's just brought me to, sport has helped me settle down in life and helped me, get a home and make a life. And without sport, I mean, I think most of us would be lost, really. Sport's such an incredible outlet. And by sport, for me, it was mainly fishing. It was also training as martial arts and then just travel to places that I cared about, nature, like places in Alaska, even if I wasn't fishing, So that's a book. It's about, you never know really what's going to happen week to week, even day to day right now. So I'm not putting any timelines on it, but it's a really, really personal book.
Yeah, it sounds very cool. And I think people need to hear those types of stories conveyed to them and that's right now more than ever. I mean, that's I try to get across to people. So now you mentioned that you fished all over the place. If you could pick one place to go fish aside from Key West, that doesn't count, or fishing with me, of course, where would you go tomorrow if you could go anywhere to go back and go fishing?
I would definitely go to Alaska. I mean, I just can't wait to go back to Alaska. So, I mean, fishing, you can catch, 10 pound, 8-pound silver salmon, 10-pound red salmon, 25-pound king salmon from the shore, just from the shore, all day. It's daylight. I mean, it's a magical place. If there are any people listening who have not, gone to Alaska, save your money. It's not even that expensive, and make us time in your schedule to get up there. If not this summer, next summer, because it's an incredible place. If you like fishing, it's an incredible place anyway. And, Alaskans, they just social distance naturally. That's,
I love it.
So it would be Alaska, no doubt. I mean, I've fished, I've fished everywhere, in the lower 48, probably except in the Dakotas. I don't think I've ever fished in the Dakotas, in Hawaii, but Alaska, man, everybody's got to go to Alaska at least once.
Do you have any one crazy story that you can share with people that happened when you were fishing with a guide that really or fishing with somebody that you can share with on the podcast that was just something that sticks out in your mind?
I mean, you see so many beautiful things like, I mentioned the overnight trips to the Marquesas. I mean, being able to just get away. But I nearly died, I'm sure, when we were out by, we were west of the end of the bar in Key West, my friend Joel and I, and we were picking up his anchor ball, and the rope just got wrapped around the prop, and it was a rough day, and I had to jump in the water. I was screaming for him to give me the knife to cut the rope, and the bow was way up above our heads. He was clinging to the gunwale to stay on the boat, and I think we probably had about another 30 seconds or a minute before we got swamped. I mean, it's not pretty, but how fast things happen out there, you got to be, I'll never forget that. We got back, but that really taught me how fast things can happen out there that you got to be really careful of.
Wow. So was it rough to begin with, or did the weather pick up, or like?
Yeah. The weather picked up. It was rough. The current was strong, and once our prop got anchored, which you don't want to happen. Once we were essentially anchoring from the stern because the line wrapped around the prop.
That's here.
The current just rushed into the stern, and it was pushing and driving the stern down into the ocean. And there was like 1.5 feet, 2 feet of water on the deck as I was in the water looking up at the bow pointing up over me. You just go through something like that, and now I carry PLBs with me, even when I'm with you, Ryan. I have a PLB in my pocket.
Yeah,
a personal locator beacon. I mean, my brother has a boat up here and in Stewart, and I've been telling him for months to get a PLB, and I know by now he does, but I guess that's why we love fishing, partly because of the risk and the exploration and the adventure of it. But once you see, the underlying risk of what can happen when you're really out there, you never forget it. So, man, stay safe. You know that. One of the most, innovative and cautious and thoughtful captains that I've met. So that's why I love working with you on stories. And, when all this shakes out, I'll be down and I'll be fishing with you, man. And we'll figure out some new stories to tell. Yeah,
for sure, brother. It's always exciting. It's always super fun working with you. And we've, it's really been just a great, for me, it's just awesome getting to know you and work with you personally. So thank you.
Yeah, I love Tavernier. I got to say, you're in a great spot. I mean, I don't know how you and Melinda were able to pick it, but Tavernier is so sweet. It's just a beautiful spot, and you shoot right out to the reef and the blue water. So good for you, man. Yeah. I know when you turn, it's going to be great.
Yeah, it's a good spot to be, and I wish more people would realize they don't need to travel all the way. It's awesome to travel all the way down, but if you're just looking for a short trip, the Upper Keys and Tavernier is just in a really good spot to go fishing. Tavernier Creek, and you can get to all those areas really fast. So, and there's just amazing bottom fishing off Key Largo to Tavernier.
Amazing. I've had some of the best days bottom fishing with you that I've had, period, in the Keys. And if you time my traffic right, I'm in basically Central Florida, so if you time that, get through Miami when it's low traffic, you can get down to where you are in 3 hours, which is nothing. So it's really, really, it's convenient, accessible. Can't wait to come back, man.
Yeah, I can't wait to have you back. Is there anything else that you want to share with anybody any words of wisdom you want to share before we wrap things up?
I just say, when you go out fishing, listen to your captain. That's the words of wisdom. Just listen to your captain and learn from your captain. But fishing is one of the greatest things really that we can do. And I wouldn't always say that, a day spent fishing is better than a day at work, right? Because that's not always true. And there's a lot of frustration, but it's the realest thing realest sort of sport, and the most refreshing way to get out there that I've found. So I'm just pulling for everybody to get back to fishing as soon as possible.
Yeah, no, I really enjoy fishing with you, brother. I really do. And I thank you for coming on. I cannot wait for your new books. Guys, I've got David's book in my tackle store, the goodkarmafishingtackle.com. It's titled Fishing Key West and the Lower Keys by David Conway. I'll have it up in my Facebook store. David, thank you again. Hey, David, how can my audience get a hold of you?
Well, one way is that I'm on Instagram. That's pretty easy. It's David Conway 123. I post up, some good fishing stuff, some beach fishing stuff from Central Florida here, and some my martial arts training. But all my books are going to be, of course, noted on there too when they finally find their way out. So David Conway 123 Instagram.
Awesome, bud. Very cool. Thank you again for coming on, man. It's like I said, it's like my readers are going to get a lot out of this book, and if they're not buying it, then it's their loss. Let's just say it's their loss. Thanks again, David.
Thanks, Ryan.